Padres Hot Tub is brought to you by the Padres Hot Tub community, which you can find via Patreon. Patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub is the place that you can support the show, and you can find your way to a community of about 500 plus people who support Padres Hot Tub, support this podcast, independent podcasting, and the like. So check it out for just $5 a month, and there's higher levels with higher perks. But as low as $5 a month to check it out, patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. And guys, in good times and bad, it's great to have the community together.
Yeah, I just want to plug that we had our first group therapy of 2025. Chris was an all-star on it and really gave a very raw reaction to Roki Sasaki. That is a show that is just for our patrons. We have found that there's a level of intimacy and honesty that we love just having within the community, and so having that show for our patrons has been great so far. And yeah, I also just want to shout out, because it's something that we haven't talked about in a while. At our highest level of huge patrons, a perk that we offer them is the chance to get to co-host a show with the three of us. Every year a huge patron gets to cash in on that opportunity. So if you are listening to this and you have had very strong opinions about what we've discussed, very positive ones, very negative ones, and you want to give us a piece of your mind on air with all of us, you can do that as a huge patron, available as one of the tiers at patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub.
And in the bad times, there's still value on our Discord, because you can learn about where, say, San Diego and Southern California itself's only 3-star Michelin restaurant is. You can learn about what books are out. You might even be able to get a game of golf in with Craig. There's just a whole bunch going on that isn't just bitching about the Padres, although we're happy to do that too.
Yeah, in fact, Monday we had a foursome that was put together entirely via the Padres Hot Tub Discord, including one of our huge patrons who was mentioning to me when we went out for a drink afterwards that he got the invite and he's trying to figure out which week to come on, and then what does he want to say? Yeah. So hey, listen, that's the challenge we face every week. So try it for yourself at a entry level or higher level. Patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. Welcome to the Padres Hot Tub, everybody. It's Craig Elston, it's Chris Reed, it's Raphie Cantor. It's Monday, January 20th. These guys have found a way to gin up physical enthusiasm for our intro if you are watching on YouTube, which we invite you to do. We've got the Padres Hot Tub channel on YouTube. We're, of course, a free podcast available on all streaming platforms. We also have a Patreon if you didn't hear about that before. That's where we are. I'm Craig Elston. There's Chris Reed and Raphie Cantor. They're together. We're ready to roll and talk about another set of gut-punching, awful, not great for the Padres news. And here we go. Rafe, you mentioned in our Patreon ad, but for people who didn't hear that or hit skippy through, understand. But you guys did a group therapy live on Friday night. I was announcing a soccer's match at the time, so I couldn't join you. But you guys did one to react to the Dodgers signing Roki Sasaki and puncturing the dream balloon that the Padres themselves filled with tons of helium over the course of the last couple of weeks and months, and saw that thing pop. I agree, Raphie. I thought Chris had a very impassioned start to it. He went right up the blame ladder, and you can go check that out if you're a patron for yourself. I guess here's what I would say, and it's something that we talked about, I think, previously, but now I just feel like it's when that decision came down, I felt like officially whatever was left of Camelot for the Padres franchise is gone. And it's gone, and it's gone forever. Sasaki was the dream for it to continue. And that doesn't mean that they can't be a winning team or win, but I'm talking about that Peter Seidler magical era. We spend, we get the stars, we get the guys, people choose this. We've created a virtuous cycle. We're spending, the fans are spending, and now the players are noticing, and they're going to come here, and the perfect guy for the perfect situation. We've been recruiting him for years. We've been working this for years. Have trust, have faith. Even if we're not spending on other things, we're going to do it. And you didn't get him. You didn't get him. LA got him. The team that you are trying ostensibly to beat, although no one can beat them anymore. They got him instead of you. And I understand it for Roki Sasaki. Of course. It's selfish of us to make him want to choose us. We're putting our own filters over what he's doing. I mean, this would be the equivalent of a young, brilliant American soccer player being given the chance to star for Manchester City and going like, and then there's somebody at Arsenal or, there's somebody at
like Everton or
Everton. Yes, thank you. There's someone at Everton who put in so much work on this kid and was at his practice when he was 11 years old running around on an AYSO field, and still he gets a chance to go play for Man City, and he's going to play for Man City, because it's the biggest and the brightest in the world, and why wouldn't you? So I don't blame Roki Sasaki. I don't blame the Padres, but the Padres put a ton of chips into this pot, and they came up empty. They tried to win the lotto, and that was like a strategy for the offseason was to win the lotto. And what do you know? You didn't. Now what? So I know everyone's writing their now what columns, and we'll do some now what on the show. But to me, now the inaction becomes a negative, because all this time we gave them the grace of, well, they're putting all of this time has been on Roki, and if you land Roki, cool. I want to hear the story about AJ spending 20 hours a day, in some Japanese gym, dribbling basketballs and making phone calls. But no, you didn't get him. You failed. Your strategy is punctured. And the idea that we've got this glorious time of Padres baseball has taken a really, really hard hit, in my opinion. And now it's this cold, bleak, not bleak in terms of like, oh, the future is bleak, but more like that winter sun, cold winter sun. You know what I mean? That it's bright, but it's cold. And it says, we've got a different situation now. We've got a different ownership situation. We've got uncertainty. And you've got a core group of players that you've paid for. And what else do you have? You've got a not endless well of patience to wait for some sort of improvement to get into the wild card era, and then, we'll get to it by Tanner Scott's side. But like, honestly, the last thing I would say and turn it back to you guys is I want to stay intellectually consistent. I know I made the argument before. So the fact that LA is now scooping every single player and just getting everyone, I wish they had gotten Corbin Burns too. Like I really do. I wish they had gotten Corbin Burns too, because the more they concentrate talent, they could beat our rivals just as well. And the goal for the Padres for the rest of the 2020s is to make a wild card spot if they can make it that particular season.
Yeah. I think you said it really well in, Camelot is over. And I think, something that Chris and I speculated on in group therapy, specifically was talking about the ownership situation. And that was pure speculation at that point, that this ownership situation, was affecting potentially Roki's chances. Well, an article came out a day ago or 2 days ago in The Athletic with reporting from, yes, Mr. Bowtie, but also Dennis Lin is credited as a co-author. Fabian Ardaya, who is a national writer, but came up as a Dodgers beat writer, is all over them for The Athletic, is credited as a co-writer. And in their reporting, it is said that during the Dodgers pitch to Roki Sasaki, they contrasted the instability of the ownership situation in San Diego with the stability of the Guggenheim Group and the ownership situation of the Dodgers. So whether or not it came up in the Padres conversations or they fumbled their bag at all, in terms of the ownership situation, is basically irrelevant because the Dodgers clearly thought it was worth talking about in their presentation. So not only is the ownership situation potentially going to hamstring us financially for years to come, a situation this franchise is very familiar with, but also it is affecting our lottery ticket chances, which is exactly right, Craig. That's exactly what it was. AJ Preller needed to win the lottery because he doesn't have any other money to spend. He has to buy scratchers because he can't buy mutual funds because there's no money. There's just no money to go into that. And so I mean, we're going to get into the larger conversations about the sport and what this means in a second, but I just needed to highlight that on the main show because I know there are some people who feel certain types of way about whether it's appropriate to talk about ownership or anything like that when this is an ongoing thing. Obviously, there's very ugly stuff happening in a family that is dealing with a death. But it's clearly, if it's not impacting the Padres, which I think it is, but if it's not impacting the Padres, it's impacting what other teams are saying about the Padres, and that's important.
And maybe it's not impacting Roki Sasaki's particular thing. Maybe he decided a long time ago that he was going to be a Dodger and this all was an absolute charade orchestrated by his agent. Perhaps that. But yeah, Raphie, when you hold the two situations up, you see one that's a lot more stable. You see one that is going to be a lot more problem-free. There's going to be a lot less drama. And Craig, you're absolutely right. It is just like Camelot. Richard Gere came over looking for a new way to find his life, and the Padres showed him King Arthur, Sean Connery, but then Richard Gere went for the hot Julia Ormond, and Maligan came in and burned everything down. I got your metaphor exactly. I understood it. Brother to brother, yours in life and death. Yes, I understood all of that. And the thing is, I just don't have much more to say about Roki.
Sorry, Chris, were you going to say something?
No, I'm with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before I toss it back to you, Craig, I just want to say that the way that Roki went and this offseason has went, it's almost like I'm moving to a new school of thought about the Padres' rabbit spending in the early 2020s, which was when it was happening. It was, oh my God, this is amazing. Holy crap. We're spending, the spigot's not turning off, in sight. 2024, Seidler's dead. And now it's, oh my gosh, are we now anchored to a bunch of contracts that are going to weigh us down? And what does that mean for the viability of the club going forward? And now with the ownership struggles, I'm almost coming around to maybe these contracts are a good thing because the floor for the team is at least one of a 500 baseball team for the next few years. And if these contracts had not been signed, the ownership would be selling everyone away and the team would be literally unwatchable. So,
I mean, imagine if you, Darvish, didn't have a no trade clause right now. That would be a guy that you'd be looking at that number being like, oh, he's a great mentor, sure, but gosh, I feel like he can probably get us some salary relief if we just dumped him to a contender who's not worried about those later years. So thank goodness.
Well, I'll repeat something I've said before, that when Peter Seidler said, my voice will speak from beyond the grave for the Padres, this is what it meant. It was not, and you guys talked about it very well on the group therapy show about, the invoking of Seidler and the invoking of, furthering his vision and furthering his goals and his dreams. We got to put all that stuff aside. You can't keep pushing him up like he's a hot air balloon. He's a beloved man who has passed away, who will never be forgotten by the Padres, but you can't keep using him as a balloon. Like, the Padres are going to go forward with the decisions they make. But I agree with you, Raphie. Though the fact that these players are locked in, it forces San Diego to stay in a competitive mode that otherwise they could have had the opportunity to pivot from in a make it as clean as possible for a seller situation. Right now, anybody who would try to buy the Padres is looking at taking on a lot of contractual obligations for the remainder of the decade and beyond. And that is not usually what you want in a sales situation. You want things to be clean and tidy for someone to be able to go whatever way they want. So I'm glad for that too. And I do think the Padres can be competitive and successful ultimately because baseball's stupid. But just to back up what you were saying, Raphie, this was from the Athletic article. Two things I think are important here. Here's paragraph 1. With Sasaki, the Dodgers submitted their pitch shortly after the pitcher was officially posted. Their presentation centered around the city of Los Angeles, which boasts a strong Japanese American population. It spoke to the organizational continuity that has led to postseason runs every season since 2013. Stability became a topic they'd continue to hammer in their recruiting efforts, particularly as a contrast to the ongoing legal battle surrounding the rival Padres ownership group. More than anything, the Dodgers laid out their development plan for Sasaki. And then here's the other part that really caught me, which was that the final meeting for Roki Sasaki, back to the article, quoting, did not take place at Dodger Stadium, which is in the midst of renovations. Instead, the Dodgers invited Sasaki and his camp to part owner Peter Guber's home in Bel Air. Aiming for a more relaxed atmosphere, a sushi chef was hired to come to Guber's house and prepare dinner. The chef worked as Sasaki sat on the couch and chatted with his future teammates, who each vouched for what life was like with the reigning World Series champions. So that's, what would you do if you were 23 and potentially the best young pitcher in the world, and you saw a really cool presentation by some really cool guys in San Diego that you'd love to play for, and that looked like this would be really fun, and then you go to a billionaire's mansion in Bel Air where the sushi chef sets it up for you, and all of these other multimillionaires surround you, and they say, here's life, buddy. This is what every day is going to be like in the United States of America for you. Like, what would you do?
Yeah.
You do what Roki did.
And I don't remember if it was referenced in that article or not, but Roki is apparently a huge basketball fan. And oh, by the way, Magic Johnson was there, and he's got a signed jersey for you. You know?
Right. Right. So, it is what it is. I do echo some of the things you said, Chris, in terms of like AJ invoking his name at Peter Seidler's celebration of life. That really feels like a real bummer now. That feels like something I'm never going to forget, but now in a really bad way instead of in a good way, as something hollow, as a clang. The Mike Schilt comments a couple of weeks ago about, how really good they feel about their chances. But as you said, you forgive them. They're excited. There's nothing to be done. But hope is not a strategy, and we hoped to sign Roki Sasaki, and that was the entire offseason strategy up until January 17th. Then that was over. And now the cold winter sun. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You can roll this team out. You can. You can just do nothing. Fan fest, bobbleheads, season tickets, so on and so forth. The excitement. Remember what we did last year. And if Jackson Merrill has another huge season, if Xander Bogaerts takes a step forward, if Fernando Tatis Jr. has, a prime season, if he's got 4 or 5 prime seasons in him still to come, and we get one of those, even with Terso Ornelas in left field and Mike Brasso at DH and Camposano behind the plate and Brito as our 6th starter, and I don't know, Morejon is our ace left-hander now. The Padres could probably have, a 90-win team, or 88, 87-win team. It's not impossible. but they're incomplete. They could be so much better. Like, they've got 2/3 to 3/4 of a great team. And if they could make the modest investments to be able to put a real fourth starter on this team and a real second reliever and a true left fielder and a real catcher, I mean, it's not ridiculous. It's two positions. It's one starting rotation position. It's one bullpen position, you know? Like, it's like four things. A lot of teams get four things done. Hell, the Angels bought four things before we thought the market was open. They had four things on the shelf. We don't want those things, but nonetheless, like, I feel like in Padre land, we've been reduced to like harumphing at prices, you know? Well, 472 for Scott, that seems just a bit high. I don't know if I really want to spend that much on Tanner Scott. You know, Jurickson profile, I only rate him 8 million. If you're going to give him 12 million, you know, so long for you. I don't know why I'm British. However, I'm just going to be the British scold on salary. And it drives me crazy. Like, I don't care if they give Jurickson Profar $15 million. Give him $15 million. We need a left fielder. Team's going to be better with him than without him. And at this point, it would be a beautiful thing to do to help this team. Now, do you have to do something else? That's up to you. You know? That's up to you, Padres. Because so far, this austerity program has led you to doing Tyler Wade, Mike Brasso, and I think, as you put into the rundown today, JB Wendelstang?
Wendelstein, yeah.
JG Wentworth. I think it's JG Wentworth.
877 cash now. No free ads though on our show.
So we've signed JG Wentworth for the bullpen. And
I wish we could call JG Wentworth. We don't have any money. I could. What is the? It's like I have a line of credit and I need cash now, or something like that.
JG.
Oh no, settlement. I have a settlement.
Cash
yeah.
now.
Oh, the Padres might have a settlement in the near future.
Hey. Hey. You never know.
Hey.
You never know. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think we can move along from Roki. It's going to suck to watch him with Ohtani, with Yamamoto as 3/5 to 3/6 of the rotation. Oh, they've got Glasnow and Snell too. But many times last year, you guys heard me say, I don't care about the Dodgers. I don't care about the NL West because that's out of reach. And then, you know, then it got kind of close to within reach and, oh, you're such a hater. You're so negative. You know, you're like, it's division, man. You got to win the division. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have to win the division. The one thing that the Padres have going for them is the stupidity of baseball. It's utter randomness. It's bizarro nature to take a great team and screw something up in a week, you know, but the thing that you can count on is that the Dodgers will win, what is it, 25, 26, no season in 27, 28, 29, 30. So, you know, by 2030, canceling the 2027 season, the Dodgers will win like 800 baseball games, you know, at least. They're going to win way over 100 games this year. They may set the all-time Major League record for regular season wins this year with the greatest team ever seen and ever assembled. And if that happens, there's still 3 wild card slots. Whether they win 100 games, 108 games, or 128 games, or 148 games. The Dodgers could win all the games. They could go 160-2. And it doesn't reduce the wild card slots. And it doesn't change the fact that if they lose 3 out of 5, they'll be done in their first playoff. And sure, they'll be overwhelming favorites. It's freeing in a way. This is kind of a transition to Tanner Scott. I wish the Padres had signed Tanner Scott. I really do. 4 years, 72. We can't afford it. Well, guess it's, you know, it's out of our reach. There's nothing we can do. Well, we can't play by the Dodgers rules. only the Dodgers can play by the Dodgers rules. Even Steve Cohen isn't asking Juan Soto to defer $700 million into the 2030s. The Dodgers ask every single player that comes onto their team, take a third up front, defer a third into the 2030s. And every single one of them is signed up. Snell signed up for it. Today, and Tanner Scott signed up for it, and Teoscar signed up for it, and Conforto signed up for it. Every single guy signed up for deferred payments. Freeman, Betts, Smith, they all took them. Of course, Ohtani led the way. No other team would be allowed to do that. If the Padres tried to do that, they would have been called on the carpet by baseball to prove their ability to pay that off. And I know the Dodgers have to put the money into the account. Everyone would have to put the money into the account, put the lotion into the basket. I get it. But nonetheless, LA has hundreds of billions of dollars, millions of dollars, billions of dollars. They can point to it and go, we're good for it. And then baseball's like, cool, do whatever you want. Do these contracts the way you want. They've assembled the greatest team ever, the greatest team money can buy. And they will be, in a freeing sense, the overwhelming favorite to win Major League Baseball's championships, to win somewhere between 3 and 6 championships in a row. Anything less than that is going to be a failure for the greatest team ever assembled. And yet, they'll still play the games, and we'll find out. And there's still going to be 3 wildcard spots, and they're still going to be subject to the randomness of baseball's playoff, which will inevitably knock them out multiple times.
Yeah. There was an interesting article in the Ringer today by Ben Lindbergh of the Effectively Wild podcast. Who it was remarkable for a couple of reasons. One, our very own Tevin McReynolds' tweet was featured in the article. Yes, this is a real thing. It is on there. Assuming Twitter has not been taken down for something.
Just one sweet rose after another. Yes.
Tevin's
it's the year of Tevin,
tweet,
maybe.
It's the year of Tevin. Tevin's tweet was used by Ben Lindbergh to illustrate a point about the fact that the discrepancies in the TV money between the Dodgers and the Padres, something that we've talked about tons of times on this show. And your buddy Joe Sheehan from the Sheehan newsletter on Bluesky, he had it's not a tweet. I don't remember what it is. It called a Bluesky? I don't know.
A post. It's a post.
It's a post, but some people have called it a skeet, which I don't know about that. So
I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Okay, he posted on Bluesky, and he said, and I'm now quoting, "In just the last 4 seasons, 23 of 30 MLB teams have made the playoffs, and 12 of 30 have won their division. 4 different teams have won the World Series. 7 have played in the series. 10 have reached the LCS round. I truly don't know what higher level of parity you could possibly ask for." Ben Lindbergh in his article makes the point that, the Dodgers are now being compared to the Yankees of the late 90s and the early 2000s, and is saying how the ratios at which that the Yankees actually were spending 70% more than their next closest rival, and 12 times more than the last team in the league, who was the Marlins, and the Dodgers, they're only spending something like 27% more than the next closest team in the Mets, and only 5 times as much as the lowest team. Unfortunately, that was also the Marlins. Some things don't change, as Ben Lindbergh says. But I think that both of those, the Sheehan post and Lindbergh's point in the article, I really struggle with for a couple reasons. One, if you look at league spending during the window that Joe Sheehan is quoted as, things are actually much closer than things have now turned into in this offseason. Especially if you take out last year before the Dodgers signed Ohtani. We were at a point where the league was having to create the quote Steve Cohen tax because he had the audacity of going over like $270 million in CBT payments, and this was like 2 years ago. And so the idea that how can you complain about parity? It's like, we haven't seen the effects yet. Baseball is a sport where you have a draft pick that you hope makes a difference in 5 years. So the idea that you shouldn't complain about the system because there's been parity, it's like, yeah, but there wasn't spending like this. And in regards to Lindbergh's point, I mean, we're talking about a time when, okay, yeah, the Yankees were spending $150 million a year, and that was 12 times more than what the Marlins were spending. It's just a different league. It's a different amounts of money. And I think, like, to compare the two, okay, you want to make the Yankees comparison, that's fine. They won 3 World Series in a row. Like,
right.
And
I don't think the comparison to the late 90s is necessarily apropos. I think it's much more to the 50s and 60s, back when the reserve clause was in place, when the Yankees had the opportunity through a system that was designed to let the best teams accumulate and hold talent. They were able to hold so much talent, have a whole major league team in the minor leagues, and they won. Let's just see right here. They won in 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, lost the World Series in 55, won 56, lost the World Series in 57, won 58, lost the World Series in 60, won 61 and 62, and then lost the World Series in 63 and 64. And that's a level of dominance that you'll hopefully never see again. But what drives me crazy about the whole thing is that we're all wasting our time. Now, having said that, the national baseball reporters, for them, having a super concentration of talent on one team is good for them. It's good for them. So when they say it's good for baseball, they mean it's good for me.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, we really don't need to waste our brains or any of the energy that has emanated that in the limited time we're allowed on Earth. Hopefully less than more. Please, sweet death, let your dagger strike me soon. But nonetheless,
weeks without Craig discussing ending himself. A reference is back to zero.
But yeah, sorry, but hey, 2030s look awesome. Do we really want to be there? No. Nonetheless, the national writer's opinion about where we're gonna go, and it's good for baseball, bad for baseball. It doesn't matter to us. We understand. We're in a different thing. We're that muddy area that the King's Chariot goes by. Cluck, 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 cluck. So it's a different feeling for us. It's not great for us to see what's happening. But the national guys continue to hide behind the randomness of the sport. And what they fail to realize when they make really, really crappy analogies to things like, for example, the Chiefs or the Lakers or the Warriors, is that those leagues play by rules that have been changed and changed and changed again to create rules parity. Not, with the goal of on-court or on-field parity to some extent, but the idea of everyone has the same rules to play by. And baseball doesn't do that. Baseball allows for incredible disparities that favor one team and certain teams over the remainder of the group. And furthermore, as Chris knows very well, going through CBA, CBT stuff, like, there's incredible incentive for so many teams to not spend up to the luxury tax, to not spend into the tax and give up the opportunity to accept the revenue sharing money from the ultra rich teams who are buying everything and, yes, contributing plenty into the pot. And then the national writers come by with their nose firmly attached to their finger firmly attached to their nose and pinky held aloft, which is a weird look. I don't know. And say, and they're like, well, you could spend too. Anyone could do it.
Yeah, anyone can
anyone
do it.
Could
it's
spend.
The refrain.
Bullshit.
Yep.
And here's Exhibit A down here, San Diego, California. The team that tried to spend. The team that tried to buy things through and to play with the big boys and to play at the high stakes table. And we were told right away that it was a ridiculous idea. And then MLB said, hey, you can't have that money flow that you think you need by a loan to keep things rolling. And let's get your plan for compliance in place here, kids. Let's get this locked down. Like, give me a break. Kansas City can't go do that. Milwaukee can't go do that. Pittsburgh can't go do that. Their whole business operation is reliant upon that sweet check that they get striped by being folks that get the revenue sharing. So we've created a system whereby the very richest teams that have these troughs of local television revenue that, yes, they share a piece of, but even after they're done sharing it, they still have by multiples of 10, 20, 50 more money than other teams. And they have all of the ability to spend through it because it's just financial penalties that they're suffering. They can just tick it off. They're making all the money. And furthermore, they're contributing. So they feel righteous because they're contributing into the pot. And all of the other teams that line up to suckle out of the pot, they rely upon that for their sustenance. So the incentive is to lay down and hope for the randomness of the sport to catch up for you for a magical run in the playoffs. And it's going to work sometimes. And then Joe Sheehan and Matt Snyder and Ken Rosenthal and Bradley Doolittle, and pick your favorite national guy that you want to dunk on. They're all going to say, look, the parity of the league. Look, the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl for the third straight year. Why do you think that's good? But then you think the Dodgers being there is bad? Because the system is different and the game is unfair. It's not because one team succeeds. If you succeed and everyone's playing by the same rules with the same monies and the same resources, fair play. Well done.
You want to bring up the Royals. The Royals have an owner whose entire net worth is less than the Dodgers have deferred right now. The Dodgers have the Kansas City owner's personal wealth tied up in just deferrals alone. It's different. And I want to give Ken Rosenthal, a person who Padres fans have every right to loathe the past 4 or 5 months with his stance on the team and stirring up shit in the middle of the Dodger series. On Fair Territory today, he suggested that one way to increase the league's parity is by washing out a certain class of owner. And that's something the league could do. That is something that basically they could align 24 owners with the fact that these 6 are complete turds. I'd be very curious of the 23 teams that made the playoffs in Joe's time frame. How many of them made it in just 1 year or in just 2 years? Because small market clubs have to play the window game that we hear so much about from our beloved Padres. But there are 6 owners that are just stoked being welfare recipients. And I blame them just as much. And I blame them way more than I blame the ownership of the Dodgers. The ownership of the Dodgers is they're doing fine. I don't have animosity towards them. If the bottom 20% of the league were bidding on some of these free agents, maybe Tanner Scott isn't able to, maybe he gets competition from a city he likes with a low tax rate. Maybe he wants to go be a Tampa Ray, maybe he wants to be a Florida Marlin once again. And there's competition that drives up that price that goes beyond even what the Dodgers play, but that's not where we are. Tevin's tweet, the substance of it was that the Padres tried this. The Padres are the one small market team that flew out towards the sun. And it wasn't just their competition that destroyed them. It was Major League Baseball's structure. It was the collective bargaining agreement. It was financial incentives for small market clubs becoming prohibited when they went over the CBT. Why, if a small market team spends more to become competitive, you disqualify them from financial incentives to compete? That makes no sense. That's mind-boggling, and that's what we've seen the result of it. And 2026 will be the last season played under the current agreement. It'll be the last season with the competitive balance tax as it stands. And Ken kind of threw this at the fans who are wishing for a salary cap. He's like, well, if you want that, there's going to be no 2027 season. And again, that's such advancing the interest of the biggest teams in the league to being defeatist about progressive reform to the league that increases competition. He talked about how attendance has gone up the last 2 years. Well, go ahead and stretch it out back farther. Stretch it back 15 years, and attendance is down. Attendance is down for Major League Baseball, and it's up across the board for the other sports. So if you want to choose your little narrow window of 2 years to see the increase, that's fine. There was a pandemic. You can cherry pick your data all you want. But if you go back and look a little bit longer, the sport is in trouble. And it's because kids growing up in Pittsburgh, growing up in Cincinnati, will get to see Paul Skeens or Ellie De La Cruz for 4 or 5 years until their extensions become out of reach. And then they're going to get shipped to one of these mega teams. They're going to get shipped to the Dodgers. They're going to get shipped to the Mets or the Yankees or the Red Sox as they, get on their current trajectory. And they're not going to get them. And you're going to lose a baseball fan. Baseball fans, especially young ones, you need to see winning. We saw that at the Padres. Go ahead, Craig.
Sure. Well, maybe not, Chris, because in 2027, there needs to be a new collective bargaining agreement. And, as much as we revile Rob Manfred, he has stated very clearly and publicly he is hoping to nationalize local television revenue. Yes. And put it all under one umbrella, and to get the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Cubs and the Mets to surrender their advantage. And whether he's going to be able to do that or not is one of the main stage plays amidst the drama of then agreeing with the players union on anything. Because when all of this happens, the league is going to want to move toward a more regulated structure in order to make it even viable for 30 teams and for expansion going forward and everything else. And the players are never going to want a cap floor arrangement. I think they're silly. I think they should look at the NBA players. I think they should see how the money rises all the time. I know there's fewer players in the NBA, but go ahead.
Well, but no, to your point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, because you know better than I, the NBA has a revenue sharing model with the players and the ownership where I think it's a 50-50 split. So
right.
The cap and the floor are determined by how much money the league is bringing in. And so that way the players are getting 50% of what the league is bringing in. And
bingo.
And the owners are never going to agree to that. And that's why when we talk about why we think that there's going to be a lockout in 2027 that potentially threatens the whole season, it's not because the players and the owners are going to be at odds with each other. They're going to be at odds with each other regardless, but it's also because the players are going to be at odds with each other, and the owners are going to be at odds with each other. So they have to fight each other before they can even get, to fighting the other party. And that's what's so dangerous about this. And by the way, I just think it's worth saying, let's say for all intents and purposes, if we could snap our fingers and the CBT, level that it is right now becomes the cap, and it's a hard cap. The Padres are over the cap. It would be a really difficult situation, but I would rather have that than the situation we have now, where the priorities of the league are completely, topsy-turvy. And Chris, you shouted out the bottom 6 owners who are absolutely, I think, the biggest offenders. I would say just as close are the Steinbrenner family, the Ricketts family, John Henry.
Ricketts and Henry are in a class all their own.
These are the owners of the Cubs, the Yankees, the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Who
Tom Ricketts just had their club's fan fest, and he told the fans, he stood in front of them and said, "I'm only trying to break even." And that's an absolute bold-faced lie when you look at the development that's happened around Wrigley, at the revenue that team is coming in. It's an absolute lie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so they're just as bad as the
Like, I
guys at
wonder
the
if he was
bottom.
using like billionaire code. Like, if you only make like 15% annually on something, I basically broke even because I could have had that in crypto or in my fossil fuel stock, and I could have easily made 20%. So I broke even only making 15%.
Well, a lot of people love to dunk on the NBA, and a lot of people who love to dunk on the NBA don't watch or pay attention to the NBA in any detailed fashion. The NBA has completely revamped their system, and they did it by making an agreement with the players where they open their books and they've created this revenue pool and they're sharing it. And when you say that baseball will never agree to that, well, what if they lose a whole season to a labor stoppage? Maybe they will. Maybe they'll
It would
realize that
just be
this is a
so
path
nice for them
forward.
just be able to think ahead and just avoid that and get their shit together now. Like, what is it
But
about
this system
human
is broken.
beings? Yeah.
This system is broken now. This is, I believe, a unique new circumstance of non-competitive activity. When you've got these disparities, when you've got the diamond sports collapse alongside this Spectrum $7.5 billion rights deal, alongside Yes Network, SNY, Marquee, the teams that own their own sports network, creating insane profits and bringing in all of this money, and then the disincentivization to spend in response for so many other teams, the lack of a salary floor, that allows a team like the Athletics to kick along forever and ever until they finally get to a spot where they're not spending like the bare minimum that's in the CBA for percentage of pay of revenue into payroll, and they have to sign Luis Severino. Like it's wild.
They're an even
and
worse
I
case
think
than
it
that,
will change,
Craig, because Oakland's a major market, and they were given carve-outs in the CBA to not spend due to their stadium situation, and so they just spent all their last 3 years pocketing revenue.
Right? No, they did. But again, the NBA really worked on this, and they opened the books and they shared, and now they've got this system. And you say, oh well, a hard cap. The NBA you only have a hard cap in the NBA if you do certain things. Like if you sign a certain number of free agents and you're paying over a certain spot, and then all of a sudden the cap becomes hard, and then you have to work under it. Like if you go over the second apron, in fact, I looked this up. You go over the second apron, you don't just pay more money. Like right now, the Dodgers and the Mets are in the fourth apron, and so when you spent $50 million, I'm just saying $50 million on Teoscar Hernandez, then you're also giving $55 million to MLB. So it's a $105 million contract for $50 million because you get 50, but then I have to pay 110%. So, but that's it. You can just spend. If you happen to be Steve Cohen, if you happen to be the Guggenheim Group, you can just spend. And this is what happened in the NBA. The Warriors made so much money, they were just raking it in, that they were willing to spend over the maximum apron and pay double rates on salaries and pay 105% tax or 110% tax, and it was just money. They're just like, cool, that's the price of doing business. And they were this dominant franchise that consolidated, and then it was changed. Now, if you go over the second apron in the NBA, it's not just that you're paying more money. You lose an important ability to sign people in free agency, the mid-level exception. It's used to sign a veteran for every team. You just lose it. You don't get it anymore. You don't get trade exceptions anymore. The ones you had, you lose. You don't get to trade first-round picks the way that other teams do. You can't do sign-and-trade deals. Other teams can do sign-and-trade deals. You can't do a sign-and-trade deal if you're over the second apron. You can't send cash in a trade. Trades have to be dollar for dollar, cash exact in trades. You can't aggregate players in trades as well. You can't add up a whole bunch of guys to make the cash. No, it has to be exactly right. If you're in the second apron 3 years out of 5, your first-round draft pick goes all the way to the end of the draft. And in the NBA, the difference between drafting 13th and 32nd is insane in terms of the value. It essentially eliminates the value or deeply reduces the value of the pick. It makes it a second round pick, right? It's so, and then you get to the financial fines, so teams don't go into the second apron. If they go into the second apron, they have to do it with deliberation. They have to think about it and think about their exit strategy, because you can't compete up there. You want a system where if there's ultimate concentration of wealth and some teams have 20x the wealth of other teams, you need it to have a competitive disadvantage beyond a wealth tax because the wealth tax doesn't matter if you have 20x the other teams. It just doesn't matter. But if the Dodgers were not allowed to sign international free agents, for example, for a very convenient and local example, because they've been over the fourth apron for 3 years in a row, that would be a true competitive disadvantage to the Dodgers franchise. It doesn't matter what your bonus pool is. Your bonus pool is 0. You get a bonus pool of 0. You don't get to sign anybody. You don't get to make any trades where you don't wind up net money even or less, going forward. So you can never go get a more expensive player unless you're moving a more expensive player out. Wow, that would make it really more difficult for the Dodgers to improve, wouldn't it? At midseason, if they were going to go get a $25 million starter off another team, they had to move a $25 million player in order to do it. But you're over the fourth apron, so you have to do that. That's what I'm saying. Like, don't dunk on the NBA. They've figured it out. And they've created a system where the number one team in the West is Oklahoma City, or Orlando's top 4. And if, can get their whole team healthy, they've got a shot, and they're could face Milwaukee, along the way. Yeah, Boston won last year. Ooh, like people want to. And so when I bring up the NBA, a guy like Matt Snyder on Blue Ski is like, oh, yeah, NBA, the bastion of parity. You don't get it. Like, you don't get it. It's not about the results. The Chiefs can go 14-3 every year. The NFL is a hard place to win year over year over year. It's proven. The fact that they've done it, that makes it remarkable. It makes it interesting and different. That's not the same as looking at what the Dodgers can do financially that no other team can match and then pretending like that's virtuous or that's a sign of excellence. I mean, great that you're so rich, but you have 20x wealth. What do you want? It's a stacked game, and that's why I think that labor the labor dispute that's coming, that's going to be the thing that can reset this. But I think the next 2 years are going to be the Gilded Age of big league baseball.
Of big league baseball only.
Yeah, I mean,
yes,
indeed. I do feel in a way that baseball, more than any other sport, reflects the country. Like, it really is a marker. And that is why I think that there's a greater resistance to changing in baseball more than any other sport, because it's the thing that is unchanged for so long. Remember when the pitch clock was coming and everything was going to burn to the fucking ground? And turns out the pitch clock is awesome. And I think that this, like, I really do feel like it's an existential threat for the sport.
It is,
because in our microcosm of our community and of the people I know, after Roki signed with the Dodgers, there are people who are legitimately I don't know if I'm going to watch baseball this year, or I don't know, I'm going to watch less or something.
I had friends put their gear away. They put it in boxes. Not just because, man, listen, it's an emotional reaction, but we have very deep ties to this, Craig. You grew up in San Diego, like, you watched this team win, you watched it lose, you watched your heroes die. Like, it's a very deep connection. And like, just comparing Major League Baseball to the state of the country, wanting to expose your kids to things that are inherently unfair or corrupt, like, that's a reasonable thing to not want to spend your time, energy, money on this thing that's not necessarily real, not necessarily part of your life day to day, but is an external thing that brings you joy, your entertainment. If it becomes to the point where it's not entertaining, because of the structure of it, then like I understand it. I'm not going to do that. I don't think that's wise. I think the Padres come August could be 8 games over 500, looking strong, and we're going to see Petco Park absolutely jumping every night. I think it's likely more so than possible, but I understand folks feeling despair watching the Dodgers get the infinite money cheat code, and then when you see a player like Roki, who ostensibly anybody can sign, no, he was going to be a Dodger. He was always going to be a Dodger, and he's a Dodger. And
yeah, anyone can sign him, including them, and that was the problem.
Yeah,
yeah.
You said it great. They should like if baseball had its act together, that international amateur free agents would be one thing to immediately cut off a pipeline. That's a great penalty for a team who has resources to put internationally.
Yeah, it would be real. But again, that's 2 years from now when we're having to do like recreations of games because the hot tub community has nothing to talk about. I'm standing by my guns. I mean, it completely sucks for Roki to be there. It sucks. It sucks. Camelot's dead. What are we going to do? Move forward. That was the whole first half of the show. But the Dodgers can win 130 games. It doesn't change things dramatically for San Diego. We play them 13 times. Other teams have to play them 13 times. Other teams have to play them 6 and 7 times that we're going to be trying to beat out for wild card spots. And the way to win in baseball for us for the rest of probably Manny Machado's career is to win the wild card and find our way through the playoffs. And the Dodgers will probably win the division from here to the point where all of those deferrals come in and something goes weird, or the system changes. But they've done it. They've put this team together. And by the way, here's a fun fact. The Dodgers payroll represents 68% of the entire payroll pool of the American League Central. And it's true.
And that's with the White Sox carrying a load that's really bad.
But I mean, that's a true thing. And if you think that's good for baseball, then we disagree.
Yes.
And if you want to elide it by pointing at the Chiefs or the Bulls or the Warriors or whatever, that's a distraction theory. This is a uniquely financially uncompetitive time. But what rescues it is the thing that we've taught you here at Padres Hot Tub since it was a podcast of a different name. Baseball is stupid. No one should watch. Listen to the show. Fun and ridiculous things happen. Like, that's it. The stupidity of baseball shall save us all from the tyranny of the everlasting money, pouring out of LA Blue. That's what will be saving us, is the stupidity of the sport itself.
I have some good news. There is a Padre on the Hall of Fame ballot this year.
There is?
Fernando Rodney. He is a dark horse. He might be the darkest horse you can imagine, but who knows? Maybe in a couple of days here when they announce the ballot, beloved, eternally remembered Padre of 3 months or 4 months.
Immaculate Grid legend, Fernando Rodney.
Fernando Rodney. He could wear the Padres hat. The Hall decides. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I think you guys wanted me to fill out this ballot. We'll do this quick. They'll actually announce this week before our next show. I believe that 3 people will make it this year. I think Ichiro is going to go in close to, and I hope unanimous.
He should be a unanimous.
Yeah, he should be absolutely unanimous. I think Billy Wagner's going to make it in his last year. And I think Cece's going to make it. And I haven't been tracking Mr. Tibbs all the way through, but I'm pretty sure that's what I've heard is what's trending to happen, is that those 3 guys will
Beltran
get in.
is right on the bubble. And is he a cheater? He's a cheater.
You know what? I wouldn't vote for Carlos Beltran. Here are the other players I would vote for if I had a Hall of Fame ballot. I'm just looking up and down this list here, and I would, of course, take a little bit more time. I would vote for Felix Hernandez. I would vote for Andrew Jones, Andy Pettit, Alex Rodriguez, and I guess Ichiro. I mean, I already said Ichiro. Those three guys would get in. And I think I'd probably stop. I think I'd probably stop right there. I think that's
So
where I'd stop.
I'm with you in like the steroid guys aren't eliminated for me. I think A-Rod should be in the Hall. I also think Manny Ramirez should be in the Hall. That dude was scary at the plate for a large part of my childhood. You did not want to see Manny, even when he was being Manny.
And I know I'm opening up a can of worms with that, but like the very best pitcher, the very best hitter, and the shortstop with 700 home runs are not in the Hall of Fame.
Should be in the Hall of Fame.
And that's wild. And I know the hit king isn't either, but
no.
The Hall of Fame is a Hall of Fame. It's just a museum. It doesn't really matter. Nothing really matters. Baseball is stupid. It works all the time. But anyways, anything else, boys? It's been an hour, and I think the Dodgers signed somebody in this town. Oh, I just got to tell you this. My dad, God bless him, and he doesn't listen to this show. He listens to the show, the regular show. But he texted me, why would the Dodgers want to sign Pete Alonso? Is there something wrong with Freeman? And I just had to laugh so hard. I just wrote back, why not? Sign them all.
Yeah, dude, Pokemon.
Sign them all. Sign Pete Alonso, and then you can be equivalent to 80% of the division of the American League Central in payroll. Go ahead. Get there this year. Feel free to do it. When I brought up the fact that this is what we're on Blue Sky, that this was where we're headed without the inevitable labor move to a ceiling, but a floor and revenue sharing. And, I said, the alternative is someday a team that has 80%. And Matt Snyder's like, show me a team that's 80%. I'm like, well, how about the team that's 68%? No response. Apparently 68% cool. 80 not cool. But that's where we are. And until it changes, we hope for the ball to fall our way for not 24 scoreless innings. Just last year, with all the same structural advantages in place and Shohei Ohtani alongside, the Padres were right there, ready to make it to the National League Championship Series and quite possibly win the World Series. And the bats shut down. And does that mean that it's always inevitable? No. Someone could have gotten a hit. It could have gone the other direction. Baseball's random like that. It could have gone the other way, and the Padres could have had their dance last year, but it didn't happen. And when at the time we were saying that we were going to be led by the hand of somebody who had passed, that's not right either. It's just baseball. Sometimes the hit falls, sometimes it doesn't. It's not the Dodgers' inevitability. It's not our inevitability. It's the sport. Shit happens. It happens every year. Random shit happens. Regular season, random stuff doesn't happen. That's why the Dodgers have been in every single year for whatever it is, 12 years running or whatever. So, hey, we'll move forward. But hey, Padres, can
we are less
than
3 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting, and watching baseball makes it a lot easier. After our group therapy, during our group therapy, we had 50 patrons join us live in the Discord to talk about it and talk through it as we were all feeling frustrated. And since then, we've had a bunch of people join up with our Patreon. And right now, I would like to thank them, if that is okay.
Please, let's do it to wrap up the show. I appreciate you.
Sounds good. Our new patrons, just in the past few days, we have Melody, Jay, Josh, Elliot, Kai, Weston, Zach, Alex, Mr. Barry Bonds, dropping into the hot tub. Thank you so much, sir. Our home run champ.
Is it the
He
Mr.
should
Barry
be in the Hall of
Bonds?
Fame. That's him. It's definitely
I
him.
mean, he is a 7-time MVP. I mean, and the all-time leader. But
we welcome him with big, maybe not big hugs, might hurt and be kind of gross. But also thank you, Scott. Thank you, Ben Freeman. Thank you, Meadows. Thank you, Fletcher. Thank you, LV Brian. Thank you, Brian. And thank you, Grnak.
Oh, and I want to add, thank you, Sam H. from the UK, who just became a patron as we were recording this podcast.
Sam H. is on the time
Sam
delay.
H., who I've just been notified has his Patreon is paid in Great British pounds, which is tickles me a little bit. You know,
we've got a pound of silver, boys.
maybe he was the one earlier saying, "I don't know about 8 million."
Yeah,
It's a little bit too much.
That was him.
What is that in shillings, Craig? That's what I need. We need to ask Sam H.
To be determined on a future group therapy. But until then, hey, maybe the Padres will do something this week and we'll have something to talk about. Otherwise, we'll be back next week, hopefully not to kick this same football around. And by the way, if you find baseball to be maddening and frustrating, consider soccer. It's just about as maddening and just about as frustrating, but not exactly as maddening.
There's less commercials.
There are much fewer commercials. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Matches set. Basically, it's 2 hours. It's good. You can drink at halftime. It's good. It's good. Give it a try. SDFC coming to a world near you. If you're up where these boys live, they've got clubs too. And with that, so long.